All right, we'll say good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, to thank Josh and Becca Friedman for dedicating all the Shirim and Drushos this month, Eli Nishmas, Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda Ben Harav Chaim Refuah. To thank Sammy and Malka Esterson for dedicating the Shirim this month in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Leib ben haKohen, Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, and Hinda bas Henoch Efraim, and in the schus of continued Gesund and Haslacha for Mr. Morton Esterson ad mea ve'esrim shanim tovos. To thank the Pepper family for dedicating the Shurim this month, commemoration of the yahrzeit of Yosef Pepper, Yosef Dovid Ben Yaakov. Thank our week of learning sponsors, Steve Goloskov, in honor of his daughter Rivi's upcoming wedding to Eli Bogart, and in commemoration of his father's upcoming first yahrzeit. To thank the Pepper family for dedicating the week of learning in the merit of a Refuah Shleima for Yaakov ben Rachel. We thank all of our sponsors for their incredible generosity. We'll say with that, let us begin. So we'll say today's daf is Lamed Vav 36, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem at the top of Lamed Vav. Massive. So we'll say, so just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So if you remember again, we had the following discussion. The Gemara began with a discussion about Kohanim, Shluchei Didan or Shluchei Dirachmana. Ultimately, again, who do the Kohanim represent? Right? A Kohen is a Shaliach. Whose agent is he? Is he the agent of Klal Yisrael? Is he the agent of the Ribono Shel Olam? So while you say to yourself, wow, that's a fascinating theological question, doesn't seem to have too many practical implications. We see based on the Mishnah that it does. What's the practical implication? In our case in the Mishnah, where Reuven is a Kohen and makes a neder not to confer any benefit upon Shimon, right? And now Shimon brings a carbon to the Beis HaMikdash. Does Reuven have the ability to offer up Shimon's karbanos? So remember again, if you say that Kohanim are Shaliach of Hashem, then yes, he could offer it up. But if you say that Kohanim are Shaliach of Klal Yisrael, then by definition, Reuven would not be permitted to offer up Shimon's karban. So we had that entire discussion. The Gemara made it, just a quick recap, the Gemara made an interesting distinction between different types of karbanos. There's what's called karbanos that are for mechusar kapara, people lacking atonement. And the Gemara pointed out those karbanos have a very unique karbanic aspect, or halachic aspect, which is ein tzrichen das. They do not require the consent of the owner. That happens to be the examples that the Mishnah gave for the types of karbanos that Reuven could offer up on behalf of Shimon. So the Gemara said, well, maybe it's dafka those kind of karbanos, because if something could be offered up without the consent of the owner, or the knowledge of the owner, without the knowledge of the intended beneficiary, then halacha l'maisa, even if there is a neder in place, the kohen should be able to go ahead and offer it up. So the Gemara went back and forth on that particular piece. We're continuing with this now. Masiv Rav Simi bar Abba. So Rav Simi bar Abba raised the kasha. He says as follows. We'll say top line, Lamed Vav Amud Aleph 36a. So listen to this. Im haya kohen yizrok alav dam chataso v'dam ashamo. So Rabbi says, interestingly enough, so remember again, in this statement over here, Ashi says, if he was a kohen, who's a kohen? Same case. Reuven made a neder not to confer benefit upon Shimon. Or again, you can phrase it two different ways. Or made a neder that Shimon cannot benefit from him. Reuven is a kohen. Shimon comes to Beis HaMikdash to offer up karbanos. So Ashi says, if Reuven is a kohen, yizrok alav dam, so Reuven could go ahead and do any zrikas, do any sprinkling of blood for Shimon, right? Dam chatos of a dam ashama, whether it's his chatos or whether it's his ashram. We'll say, take a look at the first Rashi on the right hand side. Yizrak alav dam chatos of a dam ashama, katani stam, demashma kol chatos v'ashamos, v'afagav delo michusari kaparaninu. The Rebbe will say, this makes it sound like that pretty much Reuven the Kohen could do anything for Shimon. Right, any chatas, any asham, even if something is not mechus or kapara. So I will say, so now let's play this out for just a moment. So what's the kasha? So if we're saying that Reuven the Kohen could do anything for Shimon, even not mechus or kapara, then what does that tell you? What does that seem to tell you? That a Kohen is a shaliach of Hashem. Right? Since he's a shaliach of Hashem, he could do whatever karbanic needs are necessary for Shimon. And that's not considered conferring benefit upon Shimon, because he's not Shimon's agent, he's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's agent. To which the Gemara says, no, calm down. Dam chataso shel metzora, v'dam ashamo shel metzora. The Gemara says, let me just make sure this is still on. Sorry. Okay. So the Gemara says, no. What are we talking about? We're talking about ultimately, again, the dam of a chatos. Dam chatos or shamatzora, the dam asham or shamatzora. So I will say, remember again, we're talking dafka about the chatos or the asham of a mitzora. So I will say, the karbanos by a mitzora, remember again, are considered to be karbanos that affect kapara. People are mechusar kapara. So we're right back to square one. Remember, if we're talking about karbanos that are mechusar kapara, or I should say, karbanos that affect a level of atonement, so remember again, those karbanos could be offered up without what? Without the knowledge or consent of the owner. So they don't really factor into this discussion as to who Kohanim work for. Because once something can be offered up without the owner's understanding or consent, then halacha l'maisa, that's in a category of its own. It doesn't really help us. Fine. D'chsiv, zos tiyeh toras hamatzora, ben gadol u'ben katan. Because what the Torah says, this will be the law of the Masorah, ben gadol ben katan, which means that a karban could be offered up even on behalf of a katan, which indicates to us what? That halacha l'maisa, a karban that is for someone who is mechusar kapara, doesn't require the consent or the knowledge of the owner. Fine. So let's go back there. So Tanan, haKohanim shepiglu b'mikdash mezidin chayavin, hashigagim peturin, ela shepigulan pigel. Well, it's a very interesting case. Remember, we come now to a case of pigel. I will say, what's pigel? Pigel means a Kohen has an erroneous intent at the time of one of the important sacrificial services. Let's say, for example, like this. Let's say a particular karban, the karban could be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Okay? Now, while the Kohen is doing this ritual, he's sprinkling the blood, he has in mind to eat the karban 3 days from now. 3 days from now. So we'll say, that thought invalidates the karban. Which is an incredible thing in general. That thought can invalidate, but remember again, it's only a din by karbanos. In general, again, I will say, the holier something is, the more sensitive it is to wrongdoing, or the more sensitive it is to something being excused. So in this case over here, karbanos are in certain respects like the height of Kedusha. See, even an erroneous thought by the Kohen has the ability to invalidate the karban. So now look at this. So haKohanim shepiglu b'mikdash. If a Kohen made something pigul in the Beis Hamikdash, what's the halacha? It depends. Mezidin chayavin. If he did it b'mezid, right? If he intentionally made something pigul, I will say, right? Why would you intentionally make something pigul? Why? You don't like the owner, right? In other words, all right, I'm a Kohen. I don't like Ruvain. I'm going to give it. I'm going to show him, right? I will say, sometimes when getting revenge, right? There's two different ways. In other words, sometimes people, when they get revenge, they need the victim to know that they've taken revenge. Other times, there's a sense of sweet victory where you know that you've given someone a shtach. They don't even know it. They think that everything is just fine, going just well. And meanwhile, again, so I don't like Ruvain. Meanwhile, again, he's chowing down on his chatos, and I'm like, oh yeah, right? Not a chatos, buddy, right? You're eating pigel. How's that taste? Right? So I'll say, so now, again, whatever it is, if I did it b'mezid, now here's the chab. If you did it b'mezid, you're chayiv. Now we'll say, chayiv for what? Chayiv for what? So if you look at Rashi says, mezidin chayavin. Rashi says over here, l'shalim karban l'bailin. Now we'll say, what I'm chayiv for is I owe Ruvain money. What do I owe him money for? What do I owe him? I owe him a karban. Because I intentionally invalidated his karban. So because of that, I'm obligated to repay him the value of the animal. I'll show you in Pturin. They will say, but let's say I made something pigul accidentally. How do you make something pigul accidentally? Again, I will say the Kohen didn't know the halacha. Right? So he went ahead and he thought the karban could be eaten for 3 days. He has in mind, okay, you know what? Friday I'm going to eat it before. So again, that's a case of shogeg. In that case, Pturin, he doesn't have to pay restitution for the animal. However, ela shepigulan pigul. And I will say, but l'maisa, it's still pigul. In other words, pigul is pigul. And if Kohen has erroneous thought during the offering of the karban, one of the pivotal services, it makes the karban pigul. That's just the reality. The only variable is what? Are you chayiv to pay the owner back for the animal? So that depends. If it's mezid, yes. If it's shogeg, no. Now, watch this. Lamid Vav Amad Aleph, about 7 lines down from the top. Listen to this. So I'll say, at the end of the day, listen to this. I understand, if you say that a Kohen is the Shaliach of Hashem, the Kohen is the Shaliach of Hashem, so I understand ultimately again why the Kohen has the ability to make something pigul. I understand that. Rather, didan havu amai pigul and pigul. If you say that the Kohen is my Shaliach, right there, the Shliach of the Yisrael, then why does the Kohen have the ability to make something pigul? After all, leimolei shlicha shevisicha litakuni v'lo la'avusei. I can say, listen, Kohen, you're my Shaliach. I only pointed you as a Shaliach to do what? To do what? To benefit me, not to do something detrimental. I will say, this is in general a din by shlichos. If I appoint someone as a Shaliach, right? Imagine the following situation. I say, Ruvain, you are my Shaliach to go ahead and purchase this field from Shimon. Okay? Great. Give him all the details, he goes out. He goes out, he says, you know what? I was on the way. I saw that interest rates dropped. So you know what? I decided that I took out a $5 million loan for you, so this way you can go out and do some business. Right? But I'm your Shaliach. I figured I was empowered to do that. Like, whoa. Right? You're empowered to do things that benefit me. The moment you do something that is quote unquote detrimental, the shlichus is dissolved. So it's so fascinating. So the Gemara says like this: if you tell me that a Kohen works for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then I understand why he has the power to make something pigul. But if he works for me, if he's my Shaliach, then how does he ever have the ability to make something pigul? After all, again, the moment he makes something pigul, what does he effectively do? He dissolves the bond of shlichus. Because at the end of the day, I only empower him to do something positive and productive, do not empower him ultimately to do something adverse. To which the Gemara says, Amar, shiny gabi pigul. Pigul is different. Why is pigul different? The Amar kra lo yechashev lo mikamako. Because they both say, why is pigul different? Pigul is different because the Torah said it's different. Right? That Lamaisa, again, the Torah gives the entire power of pigul over to the Kohen. And ultimately, again, if you take a look, by the way, at the Ran I was on the left-hand side, the Ran says, shiny gabi pigul. It's kind of like right in the middle of the Ran, right across in the Gilyon Hashas, in the margin. So the Ran says, shiny gabi pigul the Amar Kra, Hilchach. So, okay, before we go on to this. So I'll say the pasuk that the Gemara is quoting over here, the Gemara is quoting is, talking about pigul. So, pigul yiyeh. Also lo yichashiv lo pigul yiyah. So I said the idea being that the Torah vests the Kohen with complete power to make pigul. So therefore, again, essentially what the Gemara says is the pigul case is not a raya one way or the other. So therefore, I will say the sugya ends and the question seems unresolved. Now take a look at that Ran. The Ran says hilchach bayun hacha lo ifshita. Therefore, I will say our question has not been answered. What question hasn't been answered? Who do the Kohanim work for? Do the Kohanim, is the Kohen the Shaliach of Hashem, or is the Kohen the Shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or of Klal Yisrael? So the Ran says, by the way, ultimately, again, it's not really answered. Umiu nihida hachalo ifshita la me'ahid be'arakam de kiddusha muchach d'shluchei d'shmayaninu ukimo shekasapti l'mala. So the Ran says, however, it sounds like from other sugyas that Kohanim are really the representatives of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shluchei d'shmayininu. So we'll say that's the position of the Ran, that a Kohen is an agent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I will say, if you look at the Pashup Pshat in the Sugya, the Gemara leaves it unresolved. And I will say, by the way, it's okay. Why could the Gemara leave it unresolved? Because there's also another possibility, which is, the answer is both. That a Kohen is both the Shaliach of Hashem, and the Kohen is also the Shaliach of Am Yisrael. And he simultaneously wears both these hats. And also, if you think about this, it's something really beautiful. You know, the Rambam writes that Kohanim, who of course, again, are part of Shevet Levi, the beauty and the power of Shevet Levi is Shevet Levi represents a Shevet who pledges their life to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the service of the Am. Remember again, Shevet Levi does not have a nachla. Shevet Levi doesn't have a portion in Eretz Yisrael. They're not given land. Why aren't they given land? They're not given land because their role is to be wholly and totally devoted to the needs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, and to the needs of Am Yisrael. So it could very well be that Shevet Levi has this duality. Kohanim have this duality of, on one hand, being a Shaliach of Hashem, and on the other hand, being a shliach of Klal Yisrael. I will say, but to take this a step further, the Rambam writes, such a beautiful Rambam, the Rambam writes, and anyone who wants to be part of Shevet Levi has the ability to do so. Now, what does that mean? It's open enrollment for Shevet Levi. So I'll say, so remember again, you're part of the Shevet you're born into. That's it. There's no trading up or trading down. You're in. Let's say the beautiful idea is the Rambam says that if you want to be the kind of person who ultimately dedicates your life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like a member of Shevet Levi, you have the ability to do so as well. And I will say, I think if you take the Rambam a step further, what does it mean to become a part of Shevet Levi? What it means to be a member of Shevet Levi means, at least on a spiritual level, to live life with this duality. That I am simultaneously, each and every moment, a shliach of Hashem and a shliach of Klal Yisrael. I'm a shliach of Hashem, and therefore, again, my ultimate job in this world is to be Mekadesh, trying to sanctify the name of Hashem in this world. And I will say, how do I do that? Like we saw in the Gemara Maseches Yuma, v'yahavtas Hashem elokecha, you have to love Hashem. What does it mean to love Hashem? Shetehei shim shamayim misahiv al yadecha. The name of Hashem, Hashem should become beloved in the eyes of people through my actions. I am a shaliach Hashem in that I am an ambassador of the Ribono Shel Olam. So my goal in this world is that people should love HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the way I behave. Because I represent HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I should live the kind of life. I should conduct myself in a way. I should have the midos that allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to become beloved in the eyes of others because of me. So I'm the Shliach Hashem. I'm simultaneously the Shliach of Klal Yisrael. I'm the Shliach of Klal Yisrael. But say it's twofold. Number one, also to represent well for Klal Yisrael in this world, but also to recognize that as a Shaliach, I have an achrayus to my people. My life is not just about me. My life is not just about my comfort. My life is not just about taking care of myself. My life is about my service to the Klal. What can I do for my people, and how could I better my nation? So we'll say, it turns out, since each and every one of us can be a member of Shevet Levi if we choose, every single one of us has the power of this dual shlichus as well. Just like the Kohanim are shliach of Hashem and a shliach of Klal Yisrael, each of us has that incredible spiritual mandate and that incredible spiritual opportunity for this simultaneous shlichus. I too, in my everyday life, could be a shliach of Hashem, a shliach of Klal Yisrael. We should each be zocha. So let's go weiter. Gufa. So Amar B'Yochanan HaKol Tzrich and Das Chutz Mimechusar Kapara. It's a great case. So remember again, let's go back before. We saw a very interesting carbonic concept or carbonic idea, which is, in general, karbanos require the intent and consent of the owner. When I say owner, the person whom it is being brought for. The exception to this rule, as we were introduced in yesterday's daf, are Mechusari Kapara. So karbanos that are brought to affect some heightened level of atonement could go ahead and be brought even without the knowledge or intent of the owners. So the Gemara says, Gufa Amar B'Yochanan HaKol Tzrich das. Every carbon normally requires das, chutz mimechusar kapara, with the exception of mechusar kapara. Karbanos brought to affect atonement. Rabbi say, where do we see that? Shari Adam maybe carbon al banav al banos avaktanim. Because we'll say a person has the ability to bring a carbon, certain karbanos, even on behalf of his children. Children obviously can't have what? Intent, consent, and therefore you see that karbanos brought from the chusari kapara to affect a heightened level of atonement, or those who are missing some component of atonement, could be brought even without das. Ella, so I'll say, watch this. Great. And the Atta, Yavi Adam Chatas Chelev Al Chavero. So I'll say, so why can't I do this? So I'll say, imagine the following situation. My friend Ruvain ate chelev. It happens, right? Forbidden fat. He ate chelev. So now I'm a friend, and I want to help out a friend in need. I want to bring his chatos on his behalf. Without his knowledge. He has a long day, right? Going through rough times. I just want to bring his chatos for him on his behalf. So I should be able to do that. It should be no different. Shekain adam nevi al ishto shota Rabbi Yehuda. So remember again, we ended off yesterday's daf with the same Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that I can go ahead and bring a carbon. A man can bring a carbon for his wife who is a shota. Now we'll discuss the parameters of this case. But let's say a man who has a wife who's insane. Legally, we're talking about, right? Shota is a definition. Unfortunately, she's a shota. So what happens? Rabbi Yehuda says her husband could bring a carbon on her behalf. So I will say, so the truth is, when you bring a carbon on behalf of a shota, that's the equivalent of what? Bringing a carbon on behalf of someone without what? Without their intent. right? What you're going to say without, they're not chayiv. Hold on to that for just a second, right? But without their intent, without their consent. Well, if that's the case, if you could do that, right? If a man could bring a carbon on behalf of his wife who's a shota, so then what should I be able to do? I should be able to bring a chatas for my buddy who I know committed an avera, but l'maisa again, he doesn't know I'm bringing for him. I should be able to do that. To which Allah Rabbi Lazar, why did Rabbi Lazar say? Rabbi Lazar said, if you try to bring a carbon chatas for your friend, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But we'll say, to be clear, when we say you can't bring a carbon chatas for your friend, what's the case? The case is, how am I bringing it? I'm bringing it for him without his knowledge. We'll say, obviously, if Reuven asks me to bring a carbon for him, of course I can do that. That's shlichus. We're talking about over here bringing it without the knowledge of the owner. So Elazar says it doesn't work. So we'll say, I don't understand. Why does it work in the case of Ishto Shota, but doesn't work in just bringing it for my friend? So to which the Gemara says, let's talk about this, by the way. Ishto Shota Hechidami. Now we'll say, what is the case of a man bringing a carbon on behalf of his wife who's insane? What is that case? Ida Achla Kishi Shota La Bas Carboni. We'll say, 1 second. If she, let's say, we're talking about a case of Chaylev. If she ate chaylev while she's a shota, then what Rabbi say? There's no chiyuv. Why is there no chiyuv? A shota is not responsible for their actions. So a woman who's a shota who eats chaylev, eats forbidden fat, there's no liability. Maybe you'll say she ate the chaylev when she was sane, and then what? Before she was able to bring a carbon, went insane. Achal chaylev v'hifrish carbon. V'nishtata, v'chazer v'nishtata, pasol, hoel v'nitcha yitcha. The Rebbe said, this is fascinating. That case won't work either. Why? Because the Rebbe said, listen to this halacha. Let's say a woman eats chaylev, and then what happens? She separates out her carbon, ready to bring a carbon. Then what occurs? She becomes a shota, she goes insane, and then Baruch Hashem, she's healed afterwards. What's the halacha? No carbon. The Rebbe said, why no carbon? We have a concept by karbanos of hoel v'nitcha nitcha. That once something is kind of like set aside for non-use, it remains set aside, even if circumstances change. So what that means is, once she entered into a period of shtus, and as a shota, ultimately again was unable to go ahead and offer up the carbon, essentially the carbonic liability evaporates. Which I will say is such a profound idea, that sometimes in life there are opportunities. I will say, then what happens? I bless you, I become a shota. I will say, now what happens when I become a shota? I lose the opportunity to take advantage of my opportunities. The chazav v'nishtafa. And now suddenly again I get my wits about me and I'm ready to take the opportunity. One little problem, which is the ship has sailed. Hoel v'nitcha yitcha. See, I will say, sometimes when opportunities are lost, they are lost forever. See, this is a great challenge of life, because opportunities present themselves, and often we just say to ourselves, later, I'll get back to it later, right? That's the shtus of life. The shtus of life is delaying things. The shtus of life is procrastination. The shtus of life is, I'll get to it when it's convenient. And then that shtus, chazer v'nishtafa, now suddenly I'm healed. Okay, I'm ready to take advantage of life opportunities. Okay, hol b'nitcha nitcha. Sometimes once the door is closed, and once you've said no, the opportunities don't represent themselves. An incredible Musar in life. Elo, me'ata, so therefore I will say, so what's the case? Say, Elo me'ata, if that's the case, yavi adam pesach al chavero. So I will say, so therefore there doesn't really seem to be a case of where a man is bringing a carbon on behalf of his wife, who's a shota. So now the Gemara pivots a little bit. The Gemara says, well, what about this? Elo me'ata, yavi adam pesach al chavero. So I will say, okay, but I should be able to bring a carbon pesach on behalf of my friend. Why? I will say, now listen to this. Now we're switching gears. Now remember, pesach is not muchus or kapara, right? Pesach is a carbon. So I should be able to bring a carbon pesach on behalf of my friend. Why? I will say, what's the logic? Listen to this. Shekain adam maybe al bana va'al banosa faktanim. I will say, this is great. Remember, what's the halacha of carbon pesach? I offer a pesach on behalf of my children as well, right? I figure out how many people do I have in my family. So I have 6 children. So now I'm going to go ahead and offer up karbanos to my 6 children. Now we'll say, so again, my children, some of them may be minors, are ketanim. Yet, I'm offering up the carbon on their behalf. What do you see from here? That Pesach can be offered up on someone's behalf even without what? even without their consent, their knowledge. If that's the case, then I should be able to offer up Korban Pesach on behalf of my friend. I want to do my friend a favor. I want to shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf, even without his knowledge. It should work. The Gemara says, Alama Amr Belazar, Hifrish Pesach HaChaver Lo Asav Lo Klum. Then why does it say that if you offer up a Korban Pesach on behalf of your friend without his knowledge, that's a meaningless act? In other words, you cannot offer up Korban Pesach on your friend's behalf without his knowledge. So we'll say this is incredible. So how do those two things stem? In other words, we'll say, how do they reconcile? On one hand, you're telling me I cannot offer up a Korban Pesach on behalf of my friend. Then in the next breath, what are you saying? I can offer up a Korban Pesach on behalf of who? My kids. Well, I don't understand. My kids don't have legal consent. If they don't have legal consent, I'm offering up a korban on behalf of someone who doesn't have legal consent. Why is that different than offering it up on behalf of my friend who hasn't consented either? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. This is incredible. The Gemara says, because Amar Rabbi Zera set lebeis avos lav da'oraisa. They both say this is incredible. The concept of children being included in Korban Pesach is not a din da'oraisa. Now, what does that mean? I both say, take a look at the Ran. This is the second line of the Ran, second wide line. Amar Rabbi Zera set lebeis avos lav da'oraisa li olam b'chi haydanin umiyu b'pesach lo matzi l'medak. The set lebeis avos lav da'oraisa. The min Torah ein aktanim tzrichin lihimanos b'seh ibnei achabura ela ochlin mimenu afa pishlom nimnu. We'll say it's incredible. There's a fascinating halacha about Korban Pesach. What's the halacha about Korban Pesach? Chabura. You must be counted as part of a group. If you're not counted as part of a group, what's the halacha? No Pesach for you. No Pesach for you if you're not part of the group. I was saying, the din of being counted as part of a group only applies to adults. It doesn't apply to kids. From which Pesach could kids eat from? What Pesach kids eat from? Any Pesach they want. Any Pesach they want. Now, midrabanan, we tell a father, keep your kids in mind. Or someone keep the kids in mind. But Rabbi said, children do not need to be part of the chabura, which means that when shechting the Korban Pesach, we'll call it the balabayis, does not have to have in mind his kids. The kids can eat from it regardless, because kids can eat from any Korban Pesach they want. But children do not need to be counted as part of a chabura. So now I understand it. So we'll say, so when we say that a father shechs the Korban Pesach on behalf of his kids, what does that really mean legally? What does it mean legally? Nothing. It just sounds nice. It sounds nice. Kiddalach, I have you in mind when I shut the Korban Pesach. Right? It sounds beautiful. But legally, it's totally unnecessary because children do not need to be counted as part of a chabura for Korban Pesach. Incredible. Therefore, I will say, that's fundamentally different than my friend. Right? So now I understand, I can't shut the Korban Pesach on behalf of Reuben. Why not? Reuben is to be part of a chabura. I mean, part of a chabura requires das. Therefore, again, I cannot shet the Korban Pesach on his behalf. So the Gemara proves this assertion. The Gemara says, Umimai, how do we know that kids don't need to be part of a chabura? Midisnan. Listen to this. Homer Labanov, father says to his kids, Harini shochet as ha-pesach al mishayala mikem rishon Yerushalayim. So let's listen to this. The father says to his kids, whoever gets to Yerushalayim first is going to be included in my Korban Pesach. Okay? Bein shechnes rishon rosha v'rubo zacha bechelko umezakes echav imo. Once the first kid gets to Yerushalayim, right, the majority of his body enters into Yerushalayim, then what happens? He gets a portion, and he acquires for his siblings a portion as well. So the says, 1 second. V'am b'selabes abes l'set labayis daraisa al bisra koi umezakile. So I say, I don't understand. If selabayis, if children need to be part of the chabura, then when the first kid gets there, he's part of the chabura. But how does he entitle his siblings, his brothers and sisters, to be part of the chabura as well? Ella lamalu da'amrlu anavun kedei lazarzin b'misos. Because I will say, when the father says ultimately again, whichever of you gets to Yerushalayim first as part of the chabura, we will say, what is the father doing? He's trying to cause his children to have zrizos. Right? He's trying to get them to move. He's trying to have the right alacrity and zeal, and he wants them to feel a certain sense of fire in the performance of mitzvahs. But in reality, I will say, who's getting Korban Pesach? They're all getting Korban Pesach. And I will say, these are about minor children. Adult children need to be part of the chabura, right? But the minor children, they're already getting Korban Pesach. He's only saying this in order to give them a sense of zrizos. But lamaisa, again, they are all by definition included in the karban. So the Gemara says that supports this. Maisahaya. There was an episode that occurred. The kidmu banos labanim. It is great. One time, a father said this to his kids. Right? He will say, okay, kids, whoever gets there first, right, ultimately gets a piece of the Karban Pesach. He will say, who got there first? The girls. Right? The girls got there first, and I will say the Gemara says, V'nimsu banos zrizos ubanim shvelim. And it turned out the daughters are alacritus and boys are lazy. Right? So we'll say, so again, it's interestingly enough, I will say, but what doesn't it say? It doesn't say, the girls got Karban Pesach and the boys didn't. Why not? Because Lamais, again, all the kids get Karban Pesach. I will say, why do all the kids get Karban Pesach? Because minor children do not need to be part of a chabura, right? They get Karban Pesach immediately. So therefore, I will say, what turns out is that halacha Lamais, will say, there is a unique halacha by mechusari kapara, right? That by mechusari kapara, in those cases, you could bring a carbon on someone's behalf without their knowledge, but that concept does not apply to any other karbanos. Even karbanos that could be brought on behalf of children or those without das cannot be brought for you on behalf of your friend without his das. Incredible. I will say, I'm a base. A lot of Rambam to do on this also, but we'll leave it for now. Fine. So we'll say, let's take a step back now for just a moment. I'm sorry. So I forgot to read the last line. But Torin es Trumosis. We'll say, the Mishnah said, we'll say, in our case, remember, what's our case? Reuven made a neder that he can't give any benefit to Shimon, or Shimon can't get any benefit from him. So now what did the Mishnah say? What is Reuven allowed to do? Reuven can separate out Shimon's Truma Semaisus. Okay? So it sounds like he can go to Shimon's granary, or the Saturn, or not exactly, we'll see what the case is, but he can go and separate out Shimon's Truma Semaisus. So let's analyze this. So where it says, Hatore mishalo al shal chavero, tzarech daita olo. So we'll say, this is a good question in general. We'll say, independent of a nether case. Then we'll say, listen to this case. Right? I have a friend, his name is Reuven, and I decide, you know what, I would like to do something nice for Reuven. I would like to tithe Reuven's produce without his knowledge. Now, what am I tithing Reuven's produce from? From my own produce. I have produce, I have wheat. I want to separate out some wheat from my pile of wheat to go ahead and serve as truma for Reuven. So I will say, you can do that, by the way. You can do that. In other words, you can separate out from one produce group on another produce group for truma. You can do that. Now, again, whether it's ideal or not is a separate discussion. It's called shalom and amukov, but it works. Let's not go with the chatil, but it works. So I want to designate part of my wheat to be truma for Reuven's pile of wheat. Does that work or not? So, in other words, do I need Reuven's consent or not? So let's analyze this. What's the shaila? So I can say, well, listen, I'm doing Reuven something, I'm helping him, right? I'm providing for him an objective service. I'm tithing his produce. Now, I will say, what's the halacha? When you are providing an objective service to someone, do you need their das? Right? No. Why? Zachin adam shelo b'fanav. You're allowed to do something that is objectively beneficial for someone, even without their knowledge or consent. That's one hand. On the other hand, Odilma mitzvah dilehi v'nechale leme'avde. On the other hand, I can say, look, separating truma is a mitzvah. Maybe I don't have the right to deprive Reuven of that mitzvah. In other words, as much as I'm doing something nice for him, if I separate out truma, then what? He can't. So maybe I'm depriving him of a mitzvah, and that's not allowed. We'll see, you hear that? Such an incredible shayla. So let's analyze what we'll say. Let's analyze. So Tashma. So Gemara says, that's our outstanding question. Can I separate out truma from my produce on Reuven's, for Reuven's produce without his knowledge and consent? So two sides. On one hand, Zachal Adam Shal B'fanav. On the other hand, mitzvah deprivation. And I will say, maybe mitzvah deprivation by definition is not a schos. Right, it's a chov. It's something detrimental, and therefore I shouldn't be allowed to do this. Let's analyze. So Tashma, Tarim es trumosav es masrosav ledaito. So let's remember again, what did the Mishnah say? Let's go back to the Mishnah. Reuven made a neder not to give any benefit to Shimon. So what did the Mishnah say? Reuven could separate out truma for Shimon ledaito, with his consent. So the Gemara says, what's the case? Am I asking her, what's the case? Ilema min balakri al shal balakri. See if we say that Reuven is going to separate out Shimon's truma from Shimon's produce. So he's going to Shimon's produce and separating out min balakri al shal balakri. He's going to separate out Shimon's produce from Shimon's produce. Uledaito deman. And whose consent do we have over here? Ilem uledaito delay. His consent. Man shagi shaliach. Who made Reuven a shliach to do that? Who made Reuven a shliach to do that? Elo ledaito de balakri. Rather, it must be what? It must be with Shimon's consent. So it must be the case where Reuven's separating out Shimon's truma. Right? The truma is from Shimon's pile, so he's separating out Shimon's truma from Shimon's truma with the consent of Shimon. Ha kamahanile de kavish lichusei. But how could that happen? If that's the case of Osei, isn't Reuven clearly acting as Shimon's shaliach? Now, is he allowed to act as Shimon's shaliach? No, because what's the case in Mishnah? Reuven made a neder prohibiting himself from conferring any benefit upon Shimon. So how is that going to work? Ella, rather, we'll say what must be the case. Mishalo al shalakri, shabalakri. Rather, the case of Mishnah must be where Reuven is using his own produce and separating out as what? As truma on Shimon's produce. Shimon's produce. Uledaito demand, and above say whose consent, right? Whose das do we have over here? Ilema the ledaito shabalakri. So I say, if you want to say that it's with the knowledge of the owner of the pile, which is Shimon, that doesn't work. Hakamahanile. He's performing an active hano, providing active hano. Elalav ledaite dinafshe. Rather, it must be what? It must ledaito means that Reuven's acting of his own volition. Umishalo torah al chavero. And I will say, what's the case? It's a case of what I will say. So what is the term of the Mishnah as a case? The Mishnah is a case of Reuven taking of his own produce and what? Tithing for Shimon's produce. So he's taking some of his own wheat and designating it as truma for Shimon's produce. And I will say, what does the Mishnah say? What does the Mishnah say? It works. It works. So I will say that seems to indicate to us that you could go ahead and separate out truma from your own produce and therefore use that as tithe for your friend's produce even without his knowledge. The possibility is Sarech das. If it requires das, how does that work? This thing where it says ha kamahanile. If that's the case, I will say, isn't Reuven providing Shimon with hana? Elalav ein sarech das. Rather, it must be that it doesn't require any level of das. Which the Gemara says, no. Let's revisit this. The olam, mishal balakri abalakri. We'll say, let's go back to what we said before. In reality, we'll see what's happening over here. When the Mishnah talks about, so remember again, we're focusing now on the Mishnah case. Let me just show you what's happened over here. The Gemara is asking an overarching question. I will say, what's the overarching question? The overarching question is, I have a friend Reuven. I want to do something nice for him. So what I want to do is, I want to separate his truma on his behalf. But here's how I want to do it. I want to use my produce and designate my produce as truma for Reuven's pile of wheat that's in his house. Can I do that? They will say, so what's the two sides of the question? On one hand, yes. Why yes? Why should I say yes? Why should I say no? Mitzvah deprivation. So it's like, okay, that's the overarching question. The Gemara now is trying to use our Mishnah to answer that question. Now, our Mishnah is a different case. In our Mishnah, what's happening? Reuven made a neder. What was his neder? I'm not going to confer any benefit on Shimon. I will say, the Mishnah said, even with that neder, Reuven has the ability to separate truma on behalf of Shimon, ledaito, with consent. We're trying to figure out, what's that case? What's that case in the Mishnah? And through the case of the Mishnah, we're going to try to answer our original question. So I'll say, watch this. When I say, Li'olam, let's go back to the Mishnah. Li'olam, Mishal Balakri Balakri. No, I'll say, what's the case of the Mishnah? The case of the Mishnah is where Reuven is coming to separate out Shimon's truma. And what is he separating it from? Shimon's own produce. So he's separating truma from Shimon's own produce. And therefore what? Kida Amar Rava. Rava says, what's the case? Listen to this. Ba'omer, kalarotze litrom yavo v'yitrom hachanami. Wow. Rava say, get ready for this. So Rava says, what's the case? The case is where Shimon makes a declaration. Rava say, what's Shimon's declaration? He says, whoever wants to come separate out truma from my produce, all right, whoever wants to come, everyone is invited. Now, I will say, now what's the power of making such a statement like that? So watch this. Look at Rashi, left-hand side. Left-hand side, a couple of lines up. But Omer kol harotz litrom yaval v'yitrom d'cheivan telo shavi shaliach mamish tfei machrine v'achrini nami yicholun litrom kivoso lo mahani le klau d'ilo tarim lehai tarim le'ina shachrina. Shabbos say this is very interesting. The case over here in the Mishnah, watch this. So let's go back for just a second, plug it in. So now, Ruvi made a neder. Let's go one more time. Ruvi made a neder. What's the neder that Ruvi made? What's the neder? Shimon can't get any benefit from me. Great. Now, what did the Mishnah say? Reuven could come and tithe Shimon's produce. Says Rava, what's the case? The case is where Shimon made a declaration, whoever wants to go ahead and tithe my produce has the ability to do so. And I both say, now again, what does that mean? What is Shimon doing? Shimon's offering the mitzvah. He's offering the mitzvah. In other words, he's saying, whoever wants to come and perform the mitzvah of separating truma, right? Come one, come all. So I'll say, so now what happens? What does the Mishnah teach me? Reuven, if he wants to do it, he could do it. Why? It's not hana. It's not considered Reuven giving Shimon hana. Why is it not considered Reuven giving Shimon hana? Why not? Because if Reuven doesn't do it, then what? Someone else will. Remember again, this goes back to our core definition of hana. What's the definition of hana? Definition of hana? Giving something additional to someone that they did not have before. This act of Reuven separating truma for Shimon in this context is not hana. Why? Because if Reuven doesn't do it, someone else will. So Reuven's act of separating truma for Shimon, it's not hana. That's why he's allowed to do it. So therefore, I will say, it turns out, and therefore it's also not mitzvah deprivation. Why is it not mitzvah deprivation? Why not? Because again, Shimon already said, I'm not doing it. Whoever wants to come and do it, come and do it. So I will say, the Gemara said, Rava says, that's the case in the Mishnah. So therefore, even though there's a neder, which precludes Reuven from conveying any level of hana'ah to Shimon, he's still allowed to separate out Shimon's truma, because Shimon made the declaration. Whoever wants to come and tithe, come and tithe. So when Reuven comes and does it, he chaps on the mitzvah, he's not providing hana'ah, because if he doesn't do it, someone else will come and do it. Incredible. So I'll say, listen to this. So therefore, the first question is still outstanding. Right? We haven't answered the first question about can you tithe someone's produce without their knowledge? Again, can I designate my own property as truma for someone else without their knowledge? That question is still open-ended. Next, another question. Wow, listen to this. Shabbos said, let's assume that I can separate out from my produce, I can't separate out truma for Reuven. Reuven is my buddy. I want to separate out some truma from my produce on behalf of his grain. And let's assume for a moment I can do it. So now I will say, now truma's designated. What's the shaila? Or I will say, for that matter, anytime one person does the act of separation, and the other goes ahead and has a truma, we'll say, who gets the tovas hana? So we'll say, listen to this. In other words, that halacha l'maisa, when you have one person separating, but one person tovas the grain, who gets tovas? We'll say, now what's tovas hana? Tovas hana means the right to choose which kohen you give your truma to. I will say, by the way, I want to point out, you see, this is something, everyone thinks the kohanim have all the power, right? Since they get the truma, right? They get the money, right? No, it's not true. Yisrael wields a lot of power. I will say, what's the power of Yisrael? What's the power? You decide who to give your truma to. So kohanim, be nice, right? Be nice. Because even though, again, you have an entitlement, no specific kohen could lay claim to any truma. I, as the Yisrael, have the right to go ahead and give truma to whoever I want. I will say, by the way, this is a big thing, especially for those of us, like, in my family, my mother's entire side is our kohanim. So when the Beis HaMikdash comes, the pashtos, in situations like that, who do you give truma to? Your family. Which is an interesting setup, right? You give truma to your family, right? Because you're sustaining this way. Again, Shevet Levi doesn't have a portion. So ultimately, again, you're sustaining in any event. So I'll say, who gets the right to decide which coin to give the truma to? Who has the right? Ultimately, again, is it the owner of the grain, or is it the person who went ahead and separated out the truma? Shabbos says, good kasha, no? So the Gemara says, Tovas Hashami, mi amrinan ilaf peri deheich, mi metakna karya. So we'll say, do we say that this is a case of where Reuven is using his own produce to tithe Shimon's crop. So do we say, since it's Reuben's produce, which ultimately again is designated, without this produce there'd be no truma, so ultimately again therefore Reuben should get to decide, O Dilma ilav karya dahi lo havyan perdei truma. Or do we say, no, without the pile of produce, right, there would have been no truma. So what does I see here? So do we say, since it's Reuben used his produce, and his produce is the actual truma, therefore he should get the Tovas Hanah? Or no, it's Shimon's crop that's being tithed, therefore Shimon gets to choose. To which the Gemara says, Amalei Makra, the Pasuk says, as kol tvuas zaracha v'nasata. The Pasuk says, all of the tvua, all of the wheat of your field, you should give. In other words, the person who owns the pile chooses which kohen it goes to. So therefore, Rabbi say, even if halacha l'maisa you say that you could use your own produce to set aside truma for someone else's pile of grain, at the end of the day, the tovas hanah, the decision of which kohen to give to, ultimately again is always the decision of the owner of the actual pile of produce which is being tithed. Rabbi, so stop over here for today. And again, we still haven't answered the original question. Emirat Hashem will come back to that and resolve that tomorrow. Osai Shkoyach. Moshe Ben Sion, Shalom Aleichem. So good to see you. Question Chaim, wonderful to see you. Dr. Gardinas. All right, have a great day, everyone. Amen. 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 Amen.